Wyoming Territory, winter of 1887. The wind ran wild through the pines, howling like a hungry coyote. Snow drifted low across the valley floor, soft as ash from a dying fire. On a lonely ridge stood a weathered ranch house, its chimney coughing smoke into a bruised gray sky. The porch groaned with each gust of frost. Inside, the world was quiet, too quiet. Elias Ward lived alone. He'd learned the language of silence long ago, after the cavalry days and the heartbreak that followed. The only sound now was the creak of old wood and the whisper of the fire as it tried to stay alive. Then 3 soft knocks. He froze. No one came this far out, not in weather like this. He rose, boots thudding against the floorboards, and pulled open the door. A child stood there. She couldn't have been more than 6. Her coat was torn, boots far too big, her tiny hands trembling beneath sleeves stiff with frost. Snowflakes clung to her curls. Her brown eyes bright with fear, and something braver lifted to his. "Mama said you could help," she whispered. Elias blinked once, unsure if she was real or a ghost carried by the storm. "Help? She's hurt bad," the girl said, voice shaking. "In the woods. Mama told me to find Elias Ward. She said you'd know what to do." Something inside him stirred a name, buried and aching. "What's your mama's name, little one?" The girl hesitated. "Mara." The world tilted. That name hit like a bullet he'd thought long spent. His breath caught. His heart, a fist in his chest. "Mara," he repeated. Voice breaking on the syllable. The child nodded, clutching a rag to her chest. There was blood on it, dark and frozen. "Where?" he asked quickly. "Past the river bend." She said, "By the tree that splits like a fork." The wagon wheel tree. He knew it, the old elm struck by lightning years ago. Elias grabbed his coat, rifle, and a wool blanket. He draped it over her shoulders. "You're riding with me." The girl's eyes widened, but she said nothing. He lifted her onto his horse, swung up behind her, and pressed his heels to the gelding's flanks. They tore into the storm, the cold biting deep, the snow stinging his face. As they rode, the girl whispered, "Will she be all right?" Elias didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat was too tight with the ghosts of the past, of the woman who'd left without a word, and the years he'd spent wondering why. Now she was out there again, bleeding, and this time he swore to himself he would not be too late. The wind cut like glass as they rode through the valley. The storm had swallowed the sun whole, leaving only a pale shimmer of light behind the clouds. Snow clung to Elias's lashes, freezing each blink. Clara sat pressed against him, tiny and silent beneath his coat, her breath warm against his chest. "Keep your head down," he murmured over the roar of the wind. "We'll find her soon." She nodded, gripping the saddle horn with both hands. Her knuckles were white. The horse stumbled through drifts that came up to its knees. Elias guided it by memory. The bend of the river, the old fence posts buried half in snow, the broken wagon wheel tree rising from the hill like a scar. Through the blur of snow. He saw it, the lightning-struck elm, its trunk split clean down the middle, blackened and sharp against the white. Beneath it, something moved. A dark shape half buried under a sweep of fallen branches. "Mama!" Clara cried. Elias reined in and leapt off before the horse had stopped. The snow swallowed him to the knees as he pushed forward. His breath came fast and ragged. "Mara," he said, falling to his knees beside her. She lay still, her face pale as the snow, dark hair matted with frost. One leg bent wrong, blood seeping through her torn skirt. Her shoulder was soaked crimson. Elias's pulse hammered as he brushed snow from her cheek. "Mara, it's me, Elias." Her eyelids fluttered. Her lips parted in a weak whisper. "Elias?" "I've got you," he said, wrapping his scarf around her wound, pressing hard to stop the bleeding. "You're safe now." She tried to speak, but the words dissolved in a shiver. "Clara? Is she?" "Here," he said quickly. "She found me." "She did good." Clara knelt beside them, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Mama, I found him like you said." A faint smile touched Mara's lips before she slipped back into unconsciousness. Elias worked fast. He tore open his bedroll, bundled her in the thick wool, and tied her to the saddle as gently as he could. Every movement drew a groan from her, soft but painful. Clara climbed up beside her mother, clutching her hand. The wind howled louder now, but Elias barely heard it. His focus narrowed to the rhythm of hooves, the rasp of Mara's shallow breath, and the burn of his own fear. "Hold on," he whispered as they started back. "Just hold on, Mara." The storm swallowed them whole, a white fury of wind and snow. Hours passed or minutes, he couldn't tell. But when the ridge of his ranch finally broke through the storm like a promise, Elias's chest cracked with relief. He looked down at the woman in his arms frozen. Fragile, but alive. The past had returned on the back of a blizzard. And though he didn't know what waited beyond that door, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't letting her go again. The cabin door burst open beneath Elias's shoulder. Snow followed him in wild cold, relentless before he kicked it shut behind them. The storm screamed against the walls as he laid Mara gently on the bed near the hearth. Clara hovered close, her little face pale and streaked with dirt. "Is she going to die?" she whispered. Elias's heart twisted. "Not tonight," he said firmly. "Not while I still draw breath." He moved like a man half-possessed. Boots thudding, hands shaking, he threw logs into the fire until the room glowed orange. Shadows leapt across the walls. The smell of pine smoke filled the air. He stripped off his coat and tore what clean linen he could find into strips. Her pulse fluttered beneath his fingers, faint, but steady. That tiny rhythm became his world. He washed the wound at her shoulder, teeth clenched against the sight of it. "You fought worse than this, Mara," he muttered. "You always did." Her eyelids twitched as if she'd heard him through the haze. Clara sat on a stool, watching every motion. She didn't cry anymore. She simply held her mother's shawl tight around her and whispered prayers under her breath-soft words in a tongue Elias didn't know. But they sounded like wind through the canyon. Ancient and aching hours passed in silence except for the crack of the fire and the faint moans that slipped from Mara's lips. Elias checked her fever, poured water between her lips, and covered her with every blanket he owned when at last he let himself breathe. He sat back and looked at her, really looked. Time had changed her, but not enough to erase who she'd been. The same dark lashes, the same curve of her mouth that used to steal his calm. But there were lines now, faint and weary, and scars, one across her wrist, another near her collarbone. Marks that spoke of years he hadn't been there to protect her. He felt the ache of it deep in his bones. "You still look like trouble," he whispered. The fire snapped softly. Almost in reply, Clara had fallen asleep beside the hearth, curled under a blanket. Her small hand clutched the hem of her mother's skirt. Elias draped another quilt over her and lingered there for a long moment, watching the two of them breathe in rhythm. He realized then that the silence in his house felt different, no longer empty, but full. Full of life, pain, and something that felt dangerously close to hope. When he finally turned down the lamp, he looked once more at the woman on his bed. "Mara," he murmured, voice low, breaking. "You came back to me." She didn't answer. But as the firelight flickered across her face, a single tear slid from the corner of her eye. The storm broke some time before dawn. What was left of it lay in drifts of quiet white, piled against the cabin walls. Inside, the fire had burned low, filling the air with the scent of smoke and pine resin. Elias sat slumped in a chair beside the bed, head bowed, rifle resting across his knees. He hadn't slept. He hadn't dared. Each breath from Mara felt like a small miracle he was afraid to lose. When the first streaks of daylight spilled through the frosted window, she stirred. A soft groan escaped her lips. "Mara?" Elias straightened instantly, voice rough from exhaustion. Her eyes opened, unfocused at first, then sharpened on him. For a long moment she just stared, as though unsure whether she was still dreaming. "Elias?" He nodded. "You're safe now." She tried to sit up, but pain caught her. Her hand flew to her shoulder and she winced. The river, the cold. "Clara, she's here," he said quickly. "She's safe." Sleeping by the fire. Relief washed across her face, fragile and pure. "You found us," she whispered. He gave a tired smile. "No, she found me." Silence settled between them then, heavy and trembling. Years of unspoken words hung in that small space between their breaths. The last time they had seen each other, the world had been different, warmer, simpler, full of foolish dreams. Mara's eyes filled before she could stop them. "I didn't think you'd still be here," she said softly. "I thought you'd have gone east, started over." "Thought about it," Elias murmured. "But the land's stubborn." "So am I." She managed a weak smile, but her gaze drifted away, to the fire, to the girl sleeping peacefully nearby. "You must have questions," she said. He swallowed hard. "Plenty. Then ask them." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, searching her face. "Why come back after all these years?" "You disappeared without a word." "I thought—" He couldn't finish. She closed her eyes, the flicker of guilt moving across her face. "I thought leaving would protect you. There were people who—" Her voice cracked. "I was wrong, Elias. I was so wrong." He studied her, the tension in his jaw softening. "You always carried more than you should have." She met his eyes again. There was so much there, fear, shame, love that had survived every kind of ruin. "If I'd told you everything back then, you'd have followed me into hell," she said. "And I couldn't let you." He exhaled, slow and broken. "Maybe hell would have been easier than losing you." Neither of them spoke after that. The fire crackled, the wind sighed through the chimney, and the weight of all those lost years pressed down like snow on an old roof. But when Elias rose to stir the fire, Mara reached out, her fingers brushing his wrist. "You're still the only place that ever felt like home," she whispered. He didn't turn. But she saw his shoulders tremble, just once, as if that single sentence had broken something deep inside him. The fire crackled low that evening, painting the cabin walls in gold and shadow. Mara lay half upright on the bed, a shawl draped across her shoulders. Clara played quietly near the hearth, humming to herself, arranging bits of charcoal and scraps of paper into what she called stories. Elias knelt beside the stove, pouring hot water into a tin cup. He didn't look at Mara as he spoke. "Your fever's gone down." She nodded faintly. "You've been tending me like a soldier nurse." "I've had some practice." The air hung thick between them, gentle, uneasy. He rose, handed her the cup, their fingers brushing just long enough to stir the ghosts again. She took a sip, her eyes on the flames. "You want to know what happened?" "I want to understand," he said quietly. Mara exhaled, slow and shaky. "After I left, I went south past Sweetwater, near the border. I thought I could start over. There was a man there, a rancher. Wealthy, respected. He promised safety." Elias's jaw tightened. "He hurt you." Her silence was answer enough. She pulled the shawl closer around her, as though to hide the scars beneath it. "He owned everything, the land, the people, even me. I was something he could show off at gatherings and lock away afterward. When I spoke, he'd strike me down. When I smiled, he'd say it wasn't mine to give." Elias's hands curled into fists. "His name? Warren Grady." She said it like a curse, her voice trembling. "He's powerful." No one dares cross him. He turned toward the door as if the very name demanded a reckoning. If he laid a hand on you again, Elias. Her voice was sharp, pained. Please, there's a child here. I didn't come for revenge. I came because I had nowhere else left to go. The words stopped him cold. He turned back slowly. You could have gone anywhere. She looked up at him then, eyes wet and unflinching. No, Elias, I couldn't, when he threw us out. When I thought I'd die in that snow, I told Clara to find the only man I ever trusted. Silence filled the room, heavy as the storm that had carried her to his door. You still trust me? He asked finally. With what's left of my life, she whispered. He swallowed hard, all the fight leaving him. He crouched beside her, rough hands hovering just above hers close, but not touching. Then you're safe now. I swear it. Mara's eyes softened, tears brimming. Don't make promises you can't keep. I don't make the kind I break, he said, for a moment. The world outside didn't exist, the snow, the wind, the years. Just two souls who'd been lost too long, trying to remember what it felt like to be found. The storm had moved on, leaving behind a world blanketed in white. The morning sun poured through the cabin window, turning the frost into diamonds. It was the first clear day in weeks. Elias stood outside, chopping wood. Each strike of the axe echoed through the valley like a heartbeat. Inside, laughter spilled faintly through the door, Mara's soft voice guiding, Clara's as they hummed the song. He stopped mid-swing, the sound catching him off guard. It had been years since laughter had lived inside these walls. For a moment, he just listened. When he returned to the cabin, Clara was sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing circles in the soot beside the fire. Mara looked up, the color back in her cheeks, though she still winced when she moved her shoulder. Breakfast is almost ready, she said. Smells better than anything I've cooked in years. He hung his coat, watching Clara more closely than he meant to. Her hair caught the morning light in the same way. Mara's once had dark with that hint of chestnut gold. But her eyes, those weren't Mara's eyes. They were gray, storm gray, like his. He blinked and looked away quickly, jaw tightening. You've been quiet this morning, Mara said softly, reading him the way she always used to. Something on your mind? He forced a small smile. Just thinking about fence repairs come spring. She tilted her head, unconvinced. You were never good at lying, Elias. He hesitated, glancing toward Clara. The child was humming again, tracing little horses in the soot. How old is she? He asked finally, his voice careful. Mara froze. The wooden spoon in her hand stopped mid-stir. 6, she said. The number hit like a blow. 6 years. He remembered that winter, the one when she'd vanished without a word. The same winter he'd ridden through 3 towns searching for her. His throat felt tight. 6, he repeated, pretending the word didn't break something open inside him. Mara set the pot down slowly, her hands trembling. Elias. Don't, he said, his tone low, raw. Don't tell me what I already know. The silence that followed was unbearable. Clara looked up, sensing the weight in the air. Mama? Mara managed to smile for her daughter. Go wash your hands, sweetheart. Breakfast is almost ready. When the child disappeared behind the curtain, Mara turned back to Elias. Tears glistened in her eyes. I wanted to tell you, she whispered. Every day I wanted to. But Warren, he'd have killed us both if he'd known she wasn't his. I did what I had to do to keep her alive. Elias closed his eyes, trying to steady the storm inside him. He wanted to rage, to demand why she hadn't trusted him. But when he thought of that little girl with her storm-gray eyes, every ounce of anger melted into something deeper, something terrifyingly tender. He looked at Mara then, voice barely a whisper. She's mine. Mara nodded, silent tears falling. She's yours. The revelation hung in the air long after the words were spoken. She's yours." Elias didn't move, didn't speak. The fire popped softly, and outside, a hawk cried across the valley sharp. Distant, lonely Mara wiped her tears, but her hands still shook. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "That I should have told you years ago, that I stole something from you." He turned toward the window, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the endless stretch of white hills. "You didn't steal her," he said finally. "You kept her breathing. That's more than I could have done." His voice was steady, but inside, his heart was a storm. The thought of that little girl, his little girl growing up without his arms around her, without his voice teaching her the sound of the wind and the names of the stars, it hollowed him out. Clara's laughter rang from the back room. That sound hit him like sunlight after years in the dark. He looked at Mara. "Does she know?" Mara hesitated. "No, I couldn't risk it. If anyone in Sweetwater found out, if word reached Warren." She trailed off, her gaze darting to the window. "He's not the kind of man who lets go of what he thinks he owns." Elias's hand found the rifle leaning by the wall, fingers brushing the worn grip. "If he comes here, he won't leave standing." Mara's eyes flashed. "Elias, no. You don't know him. He's got men, guns, money, lawmen in his pocket. I came here to disappear, not to start another war." He met her gaze, steel under the sorrow. "You came here for safety. That means I fight if I have to." For a moment, neither spoke. Only the fire's low crackle filled the silence. Mara's shoulders slumped. "I never wanted this for you." "For us." He crossed the room slowly and knelt beside her bed. His hands, rough and warm, rested over hers. "You wanted her to live," he said. "That's all that matters now." She looked at him, then really looked, and the years between them seemed to fall away. The love they'd buried, the pain they'd carried, all of it lingered in the quiet between their breaths. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it a sound that didn't belong, the faint echo of distant hooves. Elias's head lifted. "You hear that?" Mara froze, listening. Then she nodded once, pale. "They've found us." Elias stood, already reaching for his rifle, his eyes burning with something fierce and steady. "Get Clara inside the root cellar," he said. "If I don't come back, you take the north trail. Don't stop until you reach the old mining road." Mara's voice trembled. "Elias." He looked at her over his shoulder, that storm-gray gaze both tender and unyielding. "I lost you once. I won't lose you again." Outside, the hooves drew closer. The past, it seemed, had come calling. The sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in streaks of blood and gold. Elias stood at the edge of the ridge, rifle cradled against his chest, eyes scanning the valley below. The wind carried the faint sound of hooves, faint but unmistakable. Mara crouched near the root cellar, Clara pressed close to her chest. The girl's eyes were wide, glimmering with the reflection of the firelight and the fear that clung to the night. "Mama, will they hurt Daddy?" Clara whispered. Mara's fingers stroked her hair. "No, baby. Daddy's strong. He'll protect us." Elias adjusted his stance. Heart hammering, he spotted the shapes emerging from the dusk four riders, dust swirling around them, shadows stretching like fingers across the valley floor. Warren's men. He recognized the tall one at the front. Warren's silhouette, hat low, riding with that quiet confidence that made him more dangerous than any gun in his hand. The calm before a storm settled over the ridge. Elias's mind raced, not with strategy, not with fear, but with the weight of the life he had vowed to protect. He could lose this fight, and yet every fiber of his being refused to allow it. The first rider's horse neighed sharply, breaking the tension. Elias fired a warning shot into the air. The echo rolled across the hills, startling birds into flight. Dust churned beneath the advancing hooves. "Clara, stay down," Mara hissed, pulling her daughter closer. Her heart ached seeing Elias exposed, standing alone against the approaching danger. The riders slowed, assessing. Warren dismounted, boots crunching on the gravel. His gaze was fixed on Elias, and in it, Elias read the same arrogance that had haunted his family for years. "Elias," Warren called, voice smooth as oil. "I've come to talk." Elias raised his rifle. "I don't talk to men who try to steal children." Warren smiled, a cold, thin curl of lips. "Oh, I don't steal. I just reclaim what's mine." The air seemed to tighten, charged with a dangerous electricity. Elias's fingers tightened on the rifle. Yet, beneath his readiness to fight, he felt something unexpected, a surge of clarity. He was not alone. Mara, the girl he had lost and found again, were with him. He was protecting not just a child, but the family he had been denied for so long. A single, sudden motion, a horse rearing, a shout broke the tension. The world seemed to slow. Elias fired not to kill, but to send a warning. One by one, the riders faltered, hesitation in their eyes. And then he saw it, the fierceness of love in his daughter's eyes, reflected in Mara's unwavering courage. It was enough. Warren's men began to retreat, realizing the resolve that faced them was not weakness, but a force that could not be measured by bullets alone. As the last horse disappeared into the evening haze, Elias exhaled, lowering his rifle. He looked at Mara, then at Clara, and felt the pulse of life that had brought them together again. Tonight, they had survived. And for the first time in years, hope felt tangible. Mara took his hand, gripping it tight. "We're together," she said, voice trembling but certain. Elias nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "Together," he repeated. And in that quiet moment, with the stars beginning to pierce the darkening sky, the family they had fought so hard to protect breathed as one, undaunted, unbroken, and ready for whatever dawn might bring. Morning light crept softly through the cracked windows of their small cabin. The smell of damp earth and wood smoke filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of wildflowers Mara had planted near the door. It was a quiet morning, almost too quiet, but to Elias, it felt like the first true breath they had taken in months. Clara stirred in her bedroll, rubbing her eyes as she looked around the room. Her gaze settled on Elias, who was already outside stacking firewood. "Daddy," she whispered, "did the bad men go away?" Elias smiled, kneeling beside her. "Yes, baby. They won't trouble us anymore." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "We're safe. For now." Mara appeared behind them, holding a cup of tea. She watched Elias and Clara, a warmth rising in her chest. She could still remember the nights when fear had driven them into the shadows, when every creak of the cabin had sounded like doom. But today, she felt the fragile yet undeniable strength of family, the power to withstand even the darkest storms. After breakfast, the three ventured outside. The valley stretched around them, golden with morning dew and promise. Elias had been clearing the land, planting vegetables in rows beside the small cabin, teaching Clara how to pull weeds gently, how to plant seeds with patience. "It's like magic," Clara said, her eyes wide as she dug into the soil. "The seeds grow into food." "It is magic," Mara said, kneeling beside her. "But the best magic is what we make together." Elias looked at them both, feeling a quiet surge of pride. For the first time, he allowed himself to imagine a life beyond the fear, beyond the loss. They could build something lasting here, a home, a sanctuary, a future. As the day passed, villagers began to approach cautiously, drawn by the smoke of the fire and the promise of new beginnings. One by one, faces filled with curiosity and a little hope appeared at the edge of the clearing. An old blacksmith, whose wife had warned him about outsiders, nodded respectfully at Elias. A group of children ran past Clara, laughing and calling greetings. their innocence untainted by past violence. Mara caught Elias's eye and felt an unfamiliar but welcome emotion: relief. It was tinged with joy, yes, but also a quiet gratitude for the strength they had found in each other. Their past, heavy with sorrow, no longer had to dictate the future. That evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, they gathered around a fire. The warmth of the flames mirrored the warmth in their hearts. Clara leaned against Mara, eyes drooping with sleep. Elias sat beside them, holding both of them close. "This," he said softly, voice steady, "is what we fight for, not revenge, not anger, but this. Each other. Every day we wake up together is a victory." Mara nodded, tears glimmering in the firelight. "We've been through so much, but we're still here. And we'll keep being here, together." Clara yawned and murmured, "I like it here." "Yes, baby," Elias said, kissing the top of her head. "This is home." And for the first time in years, under the soft glow of twilight, they truly believed it. That hope, fragile yet unbreakable, had taken root, and nothing could shake it now. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled patterns across the clearing. Birds chirped, announcing the new day, as if even nature itself celebrated the fragile peace that now surrounded Mara, Elias, and Clara. Life was slower here, calmer, but it was not without challenges. Rebuilding wasn't only about planting crops or stacking firewood. It was about rebuilding trust, courage, and hearts that had been bruised. Clara ran toward the small stream at the edge of their land. Splashing in the shallow water, her laughter ringing like bells in the quiet valley. Mara watched her with a smile, letting herself enjoy these small, perfect moments. Elias joined them, rolling up his sleeves, and together they worked on repairing the small bridge that had been damaged in a winter storm. As they worked, Mara noticed a figure approaching from the path leading to the village. A man, middle-aged with gentle eyes and a careful smile, stopped a few feet away. He carried a basket of bread and some wild herbs. "I'm Jonah," he said softly. "I live nearby. I thought maybe you'd like some help, and perhaps some company." Mara's heart fluttered with caution, but Elias stepped forward, nodding. "Thank you. We've been a bit isolated." Jonah smiled and began setting down his gifts. "Sometimes the hardest thing after loss is letting others in. But the valley has room for more than one story. I thought maybe our stories could meet." Clara, oblivious to the weight of these words, ran to Jonah and held out her hand. "Do you like flowers?" she asked. Jonah chuckled, taking her tiny hand gently. "I do, little one. I do." Over the next weeks, Jonah returned daily, helping with the farm, teaching Clara how to identify herbs, and sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. Slowly, Mara felt her walls soften. Trust, once so fragile and easily shattered, began to bloom again. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Elias and Mara sat on a wooden bench carved from an old tree trunk. The air smelled of fresh earth and baked bread, carried from Jonah's latest visit. "It's strange," Mara said, tracing a line on the bench with her finger. "I used to think that safety was impossible. That happiness was just a dream too far." Elias took her hand in his. "I know, I felt the same. But here with Clara, with people like Jonah, it's like we're planting seeds again. And now we can watch them grow." Mara nodded, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Life had shown them pain, betrayal, and loss, but also resilience. Each day they faced, each small act of kindness, each shared smile was a victory over the darkness that had once seemed to engulf them. That evening, the three of them, Mara, Elias, and Clara, sat by the fire, joined by Jonah. They shared stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. Clara's eyes sparkled with curiosity and trust. Elias's voice carried calm strength. And Mara's heart beat steadily in quiet joy. For the first time, Mara understood that family could extend beyond blood. Trust could be earned again. Hope could grow even in soil once scorched by fear. And as the fire crackled under a sky sprinkled with stars, she realized that they were no longer just surviving, they were truly beginning to live. The valley had grown brighter in Mara's eyes, but even in the softest light, shadows lingered. The past did not simply vanish, it whispered, sometimes subtly, sometimes sharply, in moments of doubt or exhaustion. Mara noticed it when she was alone with her thoughts. When the quiet of the night pressed against her chest, and memories of loss threatened to rise like tides. One afternoon, as Mara tended to the vegetable garden, Elias approached quietly, his expression unreadable. "Mara, I think it's time we talked about what happened before we came here," he said, hesitation threading his voice. He sat beside her on the small wooden bench, brushing dirt from his hands. Mara paused, her fingers stilling on the soil. "You mean the fire? Everything we lost?" she asked softly. Elias nodded. "Yes, I've tried to shield Clara, shield you. But she's old enough now to sense fear. And I know we can't truly move forward without facing it, even a little." Mara swallowed. For months she had buried the grief, the anger, and the guilt. But now, in the quiet of the garden, the emotions surfaced, not as overwhelming waves, but as small, sharp reminders. She took a deep breath. "You're right," she said finally. "It's time we face it, for her sake. And ours." That evening, they sat by the fire with Clara between them, her eyes wide but trusting. Mara told a softened version of the story, focusing on resilience, hope, and love rather than despair. Elias added his perspective, highlighting lessons learned and the courage they had discovered within themselves. Clara listened intently, then hugged them both, whispering, "I'm glad we're together. Always together." The words settled in Mara's heart like sunlight after a storm. She realized that while pain could never be erased, it could be reframed, softened by love and shared understanding. And in that moment, she felt a profound sense of release, a permission to finally let joy coexist with sorrow. In the days that followed, Mara noticed subtle changes. The valley seemed even more alive. The stream glistened clearer. The wind carried a sweeter scent, and the laughter they shared felt lighter, freer. Jonah continued to visit, bringing stories of the wider world, reminding them that life beyond the valley was filled with beauty, kindness, and unexpected friendships. One morning, Mara watched Clara chase butterflies through the meadow, her giggles drifting on the breeze. Elias stood nearby, holding Jonah's basket, smiling at the child's boundless energy. Mara felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that they could not only survive, but thrive. Later that night, Mara wrote in her journal, her pen moving with ease. "We are stronger than we know," she wrote. "Pain shapes us, but love sustains us. Every day we plant seeds, not only in the soil but in our hearts. And one day, these seeds will bloom into something extraordinary." As she closed the journal and looked at Elias and Clara sleeping peacefully, Mara felt a gentle pull of hope, steady and unyielding. Life had tested them, and the shadows had not disappeared entirely, but they had learned to carry light within them, a light that could outshine any darkness. And as the stars appeared above the valley, twinkling like tiny promises, Mara whispered into the night, "We are ready for whatever comes next, together." The valley had become a rhythm in Mara's life, a quiet heartbeat that steadied her own. Each day was a balance of work, laughter, and gentle reflection. Clara thrived in the open fields, her curiosity endless, while Mara and Elias discovered that love, once tested by fire and loss, had grown deeper, more patient, and profoundly tender. one golden morning as sunlight spilled across the hills. Jonah arrived with a surprise, a small crate filled with seedlings from a neighboring village. "Thought these might bring some new colors to your garden," he said, grinning. Clara squealed and immediately began sorting the plants, her tiny fingers tracing each leaf as if greeting an old friend. Mara felt a wave of warmth. Even small gestures could bloom into lasting joy. As they planted together, Elias took Mara's hand. "Do you remember when we thought we'd never see another spring?" he asked softly. Mara nodded, a bittersweet smile touching her lips. "I do, and now? It feels like we've been given a second chance, not just to live, but to flourish." The act of planting became symbolic, each seed a quiet promise for the future. They laughed as Clara's enthusiasm occasionally buried the seedlings under too much soil, and they marveled at how nature, patient and steady, mirrored their own journey of healing. But life was never without its gentle reminders of the past. One afternoon, a visitor arrived, a woman from a nearby town, an old friend of Mara's from before the fire. Her presence stirred memories, some comforting, others painful. Yet rather than fear or regret, Mara felt a sense of resilience. She could acknowledge the past without being trapped by it. Over tea, they shared stories of survival and hope. The woman brought news of community efforts to rebuild homes and schools, offering Mara and Elias the chance to help others who had faced similar trials. The idea ignited a spark within Mara. They had endured darkness, but now they could be a light for others. That evening, as the valley glowed under a canopy of stars, Mara reflected on the transformation she had undergone. Pain had not disappeared, but it had become a part of the tapestry of life, intertwined with love, courage, and gratitude. She watched Clara sleeping peacefully, Elias reading beside her, and felt a profound contentment, a sense that, despite everything, life was unfolding exactly as it should. A gentle wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the scent of fresh blooms and promise. Mara stepped outside, breathing deeply, feeling connected to the world in a way she hadn't in years. "We are not just survivors," she whispered to the night. "We are builders of tomorrow." In the days that followed, the family began small projects to help the village, tending gardens, mending fences, and teaching children to care for plants and animals. Every action, no matter how small, reinforced their belief that life could be reshaped, not erased. And as Mara tucked Clara into bed that night, the child's eyes sparkling with excitement, Mara realized that the seeds they planted weren't only in the earth, they were in their hearts, growing stronger with each day. And with love, hope, and unity, they were ready to face the future together. Life in the valley had settled into a gentle rhythm, yet Mara knew that even the calmest waters could hide undercurrents. One morning, a sudden storm rolled over the hills, a tempest so fierce it threatened the fragile homes and gardens the villagers had rebuilt. Wind whipped through the trees, rain battered the roofs, and the river swelled with a dangerous force. Clara clung to Mara as lightning split the sky, and even Elias's steady presence could not entirely dispel the fear that gripped them. The village worked as one. Mara and Elias helped neighbors secure livestock and reinforce fences. Clara, though small, insisted on helping too, carrying buckets of water to redirect flood paths. Mara marveled at her daughter's courage. Even in fear, Clara's spirit was unyielding. It was a reminder that resilience could be found in the tiniest of hearts. That night, when the storm finally passed, the valley bore its scars. Trees were uprooted, fields flooded, and homes damaged. Yet, amidst the destruction, a sense of unity emerged. The villagers gathered, sharing food, blankets, and words of encouragement. Mara felt a stirring of pride. They were not powerless. Together, they could rebuild stronger than before. In the aftermath, Mara discovered a note tucked under her door. It was from an old friend she hadn't seen in years, someone who had survived the same fire that had once devastated her life. "You've shown the world that hope can bloom even in the ashes," it read. Tears blurred her vision. For the first time, she felt the enormity of her journey, not just her survival. But the life she had nurtured for Clara, the love she had found with Elias, and the community she had helped foster. Over the next weeks, rebuilding became a shared mission. Each new fence, repaired roof, and replanted garden symbolized not only restoration, but the enduring power of human connection. Mara discovered that storms, literal or metaphorical, were not meant to break her, they were meant to reveal her strength, the depth of her courage, and the bond she had formed. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Mara and Elias stood by the riverbank watching the reflection of light dance on the water. "We've been through so much," Elias said, his voice soft but resolute. "And yet, here we are, stronger than ever." Mara nodded, feeling the truth of it in her bones. "Storms don't just destroy," she whispered. "They teach us how to rise." Clara ran into their arms, her laughter ringing like a bell across the valley. Mara hugged her tightly, knowing that no matter what challenges came next, they would face them together. Each trial, each setback, had brought them closer, had revealed the depth of their love and resilience. And now, as the first stars appeared in the evening sky, Mara felt a profound peace. The valley was still scarred, but it was alive, thriving, and full of promise. And in that promise, Mara, Elias, and Clara found not only hope but joy. The months following the storm had tested the village, yet life had returned to its gentle rhythm. Gardens flourished again, roofs were repaired, and laughter once more echoed along the winding paths. But for Mara, a quiet unease lingered beneath the surface, a feeling that something momentous was approaching, though she could not name it. One afternoon, as she walked with Clara through the blooming meadows, they came upon a small, abandoned cabin at the edge of the forest. Mara had passed it countless times, but had never paid it much attention. Now something about it drew her in. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing dust-draped furniture and broken windows, but also a faint sense of history, of stories long forgotten. Clara's eyes sparkled. "Mom, what if we fix it? Make it ours?" Mara hesitated. The idea was daunting. Restoring a cabin required time, effort, and resources they barely had. Yet, she felt a flicker of possibility ignite within her heart. Perhaps this cabin could be more than a shelter, it could be a symbol of new beginnings, a testament to the strength that had carried them through fire, flood, and fear. Together with Elias and a few village friends, they set to work. Each nail hammered, each board replaced, each brushstroke painted was a labor of love. And as the cabin slowly transformed, so did Mara's heart. She realized that the joy of creation, the act of building something together, could heal even the deepest scars. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Mara stood at the cabin's threshold and watched Clara run through the freshly mown grass. Elias joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Look at what we've made," he said softly. "This is more than a home, it's a future." Tears welled in Mara's eyes. She thought of all they had endured, the fires that had threatened to erase her past, the storm that had tested her courage, the lonely nights when hope had seemed fragile and distant. And now, with Clara laughing at her side and Elias holding her close, she felt the profound truth of it. Every struggle, every loss, every fear had led to this moment. The cabin was more than just a structure. It was a living reminder that love and perseverance could transform even the bleakest circumstances. Mara realized that life's greatest gifts often arrive not in the absence of hardship, but through it, That night, as the stars blanketed the sky, Mara, Elias, and Clara sat by a small fire outside their new home. Clara's small hand clasped Mara's, Elias's warmth at her side. They talked, they laughed, they dreamed aloud of tomorrow. And in that shared space of love and hope, Mara understood something she had longed to feel: peace. The valley, once scarred by fire and storm, now shimmered with quiet beauty. And Mara knew, with a certainty that filled her heart to the brim, that no matter what tomorrow brought, they would face it together stronger, braver, and infinitely more connected than ever before. For the first time in years, Mara felt the world not as a place of fear, but as a place of endless possibility. And that night, under a sky full of stars, she whispered a promise to herself and to her family. No matter the trials ahead, love would always light their path. Spring had returned in full bloom. The valley, once scarred by fire and storm, now shimmered with fresh green life, punctuated by bursts of wildflowers that danced in the gentle breeze. Birds sang from every tree, and the river, once turbulent and threatening, now flowed with a calm, steady rhythm. The village had healed, and so had Mara's heart. The cabin at the forest's edge had become a home filled with laughter, warmth, and the scent of home-cooked meals. Clara ran through the garden, her small hands clutching a bouquet of daisies, while Mara tended to the herbs and flowers, humming a tune of contentment. Elias worked nearby, repairing a fence and occasionally stealing glances at Mara, his eyes full of quiet love. Life had not been easy, but it had been real. Mara realized that happiness was not the absence of challenges, but the strength to face them together. Each hardship had shaped her, taught her resilience, and deepened her appreciation for the small, precious moments of peace. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Mara and Elias sat on the porch, watching Clara chase fireflies. The air was warm, carrying the scent of jasmine and fresh earth. Elias took Mara's hand gently. "Do you remember," he began softly, "the first night we stood together after the fire? We didn't know what tomorrow would bring." Mara nodded, feeling the weight of every memory. The flames, the storm, the long nights of doubt and fear. "I remember," she whispered, "and look at us now, we made it." Elias smiled, his eyes reflecting the golden light of the sunset. "We did, and we'll keep making it, together." Clara ran up, breathless and gleeful, holding a tiny bird's nest she had found. "Look, Mama, it has eggs." Mara held the nest delicately, feeling the fragile life within. She thought of how easily life could be broken, yet also how beautifully it could endure and flourish with care and love. In that moment, Mara felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. She had a family, a home, a community that supported her, and a future filled with hope. Tears glimmered in her eyes, not of sorrow, but of pure, uncontainable joy. The night fell, and stars blanketed the sky, brighter than Mara had ever seen. She felt the universe itself embrace her family, wrapping them in a gentle, reassuring light. For the first time in her life, Mara felt completely and utterly at peace. Every fear, every trial, every tear had led her here to a life she loved, surrounded by those she cherished most. As they stood together on the porch, hand in hand, Mara realized the truth she had been searching for all her life. Happiness was not just in surviving, but in embracing the beauty of now, in loving deeply, and in believing that tomorrow could always bring something brighter. And under that infinite sky, Mara, Elias, and Clara laughed together, the sound echoing across the valley. The fireflies danced, the river sang, and the world once so uncertain felt perfectly, exquisitely alive, for Mara, for her family, and then for the valley that had endured so much. Life had become a promise kept, that even after the darkest storms, love, hope, and light would always find a way. And so, Their story closed not with an ending, but with a beginning full of joy, warmth, and endless possibilities. If Mara's journey touched your heart as much as it did ours, don't forget to subscribe for more stories that warm the soul. Share your favorite part in the comments below. We'd love to hear which moment made you smile, cry, or believe in hope again. And remember, every story is better when shared with someone you care about, so spread the love and keep the magic alive.